We had about, we had 20.
And yeah, if the
21.
girls had been here, and Coley, our regulars who were
Yeah.
missing, we'd
We've
have
been there, would have been 22.
That's right. And we had a pretty good group at the 1045 too. More than we've had. Not, I don't consider it a good group, but everybody else was excited.
But it's coming back, yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
It must have been a pretty weather day or something.
Maybe.
Or a good calm weekend, like you said, everybody was able to get out and about.
Let's just say it's an answer to prayer. That's all I've prayed about for
weeks.
months now. Just trying to get everybody back. You know, and I'll just run this little rabbit for a little bit before we start. Ligonier Ministries has been doing a survey for the last 10 years, I think. Same questions, same demographics, the whole deal. And they just released this year's results of that, and I'm amazed at how many people that are evangelicals and attend church that have no clue about what they believe.
Was that what Travis Cronin, did you see Travis Cronin today, the 5 answers he gave, and he's fixing to have a pastor's class? I'm wondering if it's the same thing.
Maybe the same thing.
Because it was what
One
people
was,
who claim to be evangelicals. I was sitting there with my mouth hanging up.
yeah. The first one that they list is that Jesus is God's first perfect created being.
That's the same thing
So
Travis just
Jesus
said.
was created.
Mm-hmm.
That God accepts the worship of others outside of Christian faith.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of them. There's 5.
Well, there was 5 that rose to the top.
But when you look in the survey, you can go look it up,
Mm-hmm.
and it really lays it out. And so I'm thinking, how in the world does that happen? This wasn't like this 30 years ago, and it's because nobody is in Bible study together.
They're not reading the word for themselves. They're getting all the information from everything on the internet or these blitz. Caleb's monthly challenge.
Yeah.
And, and it's like, and when you can answer those questions, I was reading that and I was like, Lord, we have failed. I say we have like 4 fingers, back at me, because it's like, why are these people believing these things?
But much of it has to do with we don't take the Bible serious. In fact, that's one of the things that they ask, and it's amazing the large percentage that don't hold the Bible as complete authority.
Yeah.
The questions asked, I think it's a little slanted because it asks if you believe that the Bible is literally true.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some things about the Bible that if you believe it, every word to be literally true, you're going to find yourself in trouble.
Because even Jesus spoke in parables.
Yeah. So that's kind of a legalistic thing, but I think the gist of the
it's a trick question.
Yeah, the gist of the question does it hold authority? And it's amazing how many
that would be the
people
question.
that attend church, do not hold it as an example. 92% of evangelicals believe that sexual relations outside of marriage is wrong, but when you do, there's a different survey that says that nearly half of evangelicals are okay with people living together.
Yeah.
So
the two don't balance.
So they hold the legalistic side of that, but they don't practice. So it's just a lot, and we've got a lot of work to do in regards to the Bible. What if we don't have the Bible?
And we're in our Wednesday night class. We're just looking at like 4 or 5 Psalms a week. And last week for me, I don't know if I shared, but I was telling you we really got here until 8:30, but we had the one person. Those couple things came up. And instead of us, we had to, I hate to say, we had to camp there because, well, not counsel, but I was sitting here going, we're going to read this right here. Can you read what this says? Because what she was saying, it was exactly that. Well, how do we know that the word is really translated correctly? Well, you need to know, because we were talking about, it got off on homosexuals, and then why do we think that homosexual relationships are not okay? It could be not mean what the Bible says it means. And I'm sitting here going to go, you're thinking, okay, we got to back up and punt because this has no error in it. And people out there, my explanation was people a whole lot smarter than me and you and whoever you're listening to has translated this. I said, plus I've seen the Dead Sea Scrolls. That's good enough for me.
Not only that, but this book is alive when you.
It's alive.
It's
And to me, he's in control of everything anyway, and he's not going to let anything happen to this. I guess I've seen it too much just in my own location when people try to, and they have the crazy stuff out there. You just don't go for the crazy stuff. But he's not going to let what I consider the godly printers and publishers print that garbage.
Right.
You know, when they try to call him physical, female, or take out the he, she, it doesn't happen. Not when it comes to the big boys. God doesn't allow it.
So this study is called stateoftheology.com, and it's done with Ligonier and Lifeway. So if you want to take a look at it, or if you want the summary, you can go to Christianity Today, and there's an article by Stephanie McDade entitled "The Top 5 Heresies Among American Evangelicals." It was pretty good read.
Travis Cronin printed it today. I mean, he's fixing to have a pastor's class. We're going to set this straight. I'm like, go ahead, pastor.
Yeah. Yeah, it actually has. I'm rethinking my preaching schedule. Some of the stuff just needs to be addressed, and in a way that people are going to hear it.
And then, like in our class Wednesday night, we have to be ready for that. Pushback's not the right word, because she was not pushing back, but she was clearly distraught, clearly confused. And I said, let's stop right now, because we joined hands and prayed over her in her home, because you need to know who the author of confusion and distraughtness is, and it's not Jesus.
Yeah, that's
so
right.
You've been duped, you've been deceived, you've been lied to.
That's right. All right, chapter 42.
Ready to do that when he brings it in Sunday morning.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to address it, because it's too pervasive. When you look at the numbers, you begin to think, how do people come to this? And I mean, these are people, they're serious about what they believe. It's and they don't know what to believe.
And they say we're judging and not loving.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, you've forgotten the holiness and
Yeah.
the justice, because he is going to judge. Come that day. There's going to be a judgment day.
So when Joseph learned that there was grain in Egypt, why is there grain in Egypt? Because God was with Jacob learned.
Yeah.
God was with Joseph. The reason why this whole thing has been underway is because God's had a program at work that nobody's aware of. Not even Joseph. It begins to make sense to him when his family shows up. And then all the stuff starts tumbling back into place, the dreams and everything that's happened. And so that we discover very quickly there's no coincidence in God's world. He's got all this stuff working. Well, now all of a sudden we find that Joseph is the one who is to be dead. He's declared dead in this next passage, but he's actually alive.
I think he's dead.
Yeah. And he's been given all authority. He has all authority in the known world at this point. And his father, who has grieved his son's death for years, is now saying to his other sons, why are you sitting around looking at each other? And I love that line. They're starving. The world's starving. And he's saying to himself, you guys don't have a solution. Why are you sitting around here twiddling your thumbs about this? And the whole time, they have been party to providing the solution, unbeknownst to them, that is going to save the whole world. So the ironies and the complexities of this story we find at the very beginning. And this is the way that the Hebrew writer is attempting to draw us into the complexities of the story. We know the story as a reader, but what does all of it mean to those who are actually living it at the time? And when we walk in those shoes, then we begin to better understand, the drama that God is involved in here. So we find that there's three major players in this whole event that unfolds, and you could add a fourth. There's Joseph, and he's the one that the moon and the stars and the sun and the sheaves are all bowing down to. Yeah. So there's Joseph. Then there's Jacob. the still distraught one, he is very protective of Benjamin because it's all of Rachel he has left. So he becomes very protective. So he's not in a place of authority, really. He's in a place of protection. And then there are the brothers who kind of move as a unit through this whole story. And their ability to do anything is just proved to be inept. Even to the point of not being sure if they even paid for what they received and the amount of grain and that kind of thing. And then the fourth one you could add to the entire story, although he doesn't utter a word, is Benjamin. And Benjamin is kind of the pawn in place where the brothers are able to prove themselves. Have they learned a thing in all of this time? Or are they still that group of guys that are just trying to sneak by and get through life? And this becomes important from Joseph's position, because once he knows that they're in his company, I mean, really, what's going on there? Does he want to get revenge, or is he in a place by this time where he is in such a role of power that he is truly able to forgive, and that it accomplished that forgiveness? So there's different ideas about Joseph through this. You'll read some people and they'll say, well, he's realized the power that has been given, and he uses that power to accomplish what he needs in the story. Could be. But I think...
You can almost see a little bit of all of it, but
yeah,
he's representing Jesus, so it's all about forgiveness.
Yeah, that's how I see it. I see that he's found himself in this place where he truly does have the power of life and death, and he's chosen to offer life.
And he's been through a lot too, so God taught him along the way.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah. Yeah, because everybody else that encounters Joseph sees immediately there's something special about this guy.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what's made him so special?
Why would he?
God's with him. Yeah.
Yes, I agree he's human and everything, but I think he made his peace with that.
But he's also become the Egyptian of all Egyptians, though. I mean, he's
right.
We knew him as the tall, dark, and handsome Hebrew.
Yeah.
But he's now second in command in Pharaoh, and even the brothers.
His brothers don't even
recognize
recognize
him because he has become
he's
Egyptian.
different. Yeah. But that's what I'm saying. I'm thinking all he's been through. He's made his peace. Does he grieve and miss? I think he does.
Well, but we saw in the last chapter he moved on.
That's right.
Yeah.
It basically says it. That he had let all that follow.
God brought him to a better place. You know?
So that's why these chapters are so important, because there was no way that Joseph was ever going to be allowed to move on. Why? Because this is God's program for his people. This is God's rescue plan. Joseph is Noah in a real sense. He is carrying the remnant of God's people into the next phase of their walk with him, just as Noah's family was the remnant that was carried. So we see this remnant idea, and one who carries the remnant repeatedly in Scripture. And this is just one way for us to see it, but I think it's the most dramatic way that we look to in Genesis especially. It's the most dramatic way that we see Christ at work in the grander 30,000 foot view of what God's doing in history. So anyway, so he learns that what's going on in Egypt, and he says, "Why do you keep looking at each other? Listen," he went on.
Your light's not on up there, but I didn't know if you.
Oh, the TV went off?
It hadn't been on since we've been here.
It must have went off. Will you do me a favor and get that remote out of there? I wasn't even paying attention.
I didn't
Thank you.
I didn't know if we have it up there. So.
Yeah, no, I usually put it right up there. Sorry about that.
That's okay. I just
and for those that are watching. So, listen, he went on. I've heard that there's grain in Egypt. Go down there and buy some for us, so that we will live and not die. So we're down to there's no longer a multiple choice going on in life here. We're to the point of living or dying, And the way that we're going to live is to go where? Go down. Okay, so we're going to, in this section, we're going to go down and we're going to go up. And we're going to go down and we're going to go up. And so God is, the writer, God, is creating this motion where when you go down, we've already been down with Joseph to the pit and to the prison. And he's gone down into Egypt. But where God is, down can be up. Where God is, the place where we might find, where we might assume that it's going to be bad, he's there. And it's always good. He redefines for us life, no matter the locale. That's what Jesus did for us. He redefined our life here, what is ultimately going to die and pass away. But the redefinition of our life is found in him so that we are carried into the place that is up. So it's interesting, this down and up business that goes on. They didn't have maps that showed north, south, east, and west. They had no clue other than the sun rose. They didn't call it the east. We call it the east in our... but there's this literary idea of moving down.
But even in the Middle East, it's still up to go to Israel.
Oh yeah, it's always up.
No matter where you're at, you're going up.
Yeah, because it's higher than everything else. Yeah. So he says, go down there. So 10 of Joseph's brothers went down to buy grain in Egypt, but Jacob did not send Joseph's brother Benjamin with his brothers, for he thought something might happen to him. So Joseph has one full brother, that's Benjamin, and he's not letting go of him. All because of Rachel, okay, his favorite. The sons of Israel were among those who came to buy grain. For the famine was in the land of Canaan. Joseph was in charge of the country. He sold grain to all his people. His brothers came, and here we have the beginning of the fulfillment of the dream, and bowed down before him with their faces to the ground. It's the same language that Joseph quotes from his dream. So when Joseph saw his brothers, he recognized them, but he treated them like strangers and spoke harshly to them. Meaning, he treated them like everybody else. He didn't give them any special attention in that moment. So he says, where do you come from? He asked, and he says, from the land of Canaan to buy food, they replied. Okay, although Joseph recognized his brothers, they did not recognize him. So we got a little more drama building here. Joseph remembered his dreams about them and said to them, you are spies. You've come to see the weakness of the land. Okay, so he's remembering. He's remembering the dream. It's all, he left it all behind. Then lo and behold, one day they show up and it all comes flooding back and he's remembering. So his action in that, a lot of people would say, hey guys, remember me? I told you exactly about this day when I was just a kid. He doesn't do that. Okay? He's remembering and his mind has gone to work. How can I establish what is right here? He was treated poorly. How can I go about establishing what is right?
Even though I know that this is going to end like a dream.
Yes. So, the dream is actually this thing where it's already happening.
And don't you think still, too, there's a little bit of his humanness? I mean,
oh, yeah.
I mean, you are spies.
Yeah.
I could cut your heads off.
Yeah.
If I wanted to.
Yeah. Yeah. And people from Canaan by this time they're known for their fierceness. I mean, up until this time, some of the best fighting you've ever heard of has happened.
They were wiping out everybody.
That's right. Yeah. So he says, no, you're spies of the land. He says, no, my lord, your servants have come to buy food, they said. For we are all sons of one man. We are honest. Your servants are not spies. Okay. So it's almost like, why did God put that in here? Like, we're honest. And of course that had to just
really grate at
him. That had to really grate at him. He says, man, these guys, maybe they haven't learned anything, is what he's thinking. Okay. So he says, we're not, your servants are not spies. He says, no, he said to them, you have come to see the weakness of the land. Now this is interesting because of all the land that is known to men right now, Egypt is the strongest. So there really is no weakness. This is a way of saying that I'm going to deal with you no matter what.
My translation says nakedness.
Yeah, that's the Hebrew word. Okay. Yeah, the nakedness.
Nakedness is what.
Yeah, the vulnerability would be one way of.
So it's easier.
Yeah.
Because my thing with nakedness, I'm just thinking it's famine.
Yeah.
Weak is we're not strong enough to fight you.
Right. It's a vulnerableness that's going on here that he's accusing them of trying to seek out.
Right.
But they replied, "We, your servants, were 12 brothers, the sons of one man in the land of Canaan. The youngest is now with our father, and one is no longer living." So we've been building to this sibling connection that he's kind of pulling out of them slowly but surely.
Honest about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As honest as they knew to be.
Yeah.
The thing that we discover here is that either they've bought into the story all these years that their brother was dead. Remember, that's what they told Jacob. Or they really have come to the place of believing surely he's dead after all this time.
By now, we would have heard from him, or he'd come back or something. You know.
So they've succumbed to some fact that they believe may be true, or they've succumbed to the lie that they told their father. But anyway, they're able to repeat it back, and they have no idea who repeated it to. So here's the complexities of the story, right? This is how God is really he's putting them in this place where the ground is really uneasy under their feet. It's beginning now. It only gets worse as the story goes. Then Joseph said to them, "I have spoken. I have the authority over your life. You are spies. And this is how you will be tested." Now we're getting to the whole point of this. "As surely as Pharaoh lives, you will not leave this place unless your youngest brother comes here." Are they willing? Are they willing to take Benjamin like they took me? Send one from among you to get your brother. The rest of you will be imprisoned, so that your words can be tested to see if they are true. If they are not, then as surely as Pharaoh lives, you are spies. Which what does that mean? You're spies.
You're coming over here to take over. You're coming to do something.
Your life's over.
Yeah. We've caught you, and you're in trouble.
Yeah. You're threatening the sovereignty of the Pharaoh. Your life's over. So he says that. So Joseph imprisoned them together for 3 days. So he left them in the belly of the whale for 3 days. If you're looking for 3. He left them in this place together where all they could do is think about and talk about this terrible place that they find themselves. Okay, he kept them in jail 3 days. It's a lot longer than Joseph stayed in the pit. When they threw him in the pit to die, they did get him out the same day and sold him into slavery. But anyway, on the 3rd day, Joseph said to them, "I fear God. Do this and you will live." So he changes the deal. "If you are honest, let one of you be confined to the guardhouse, while the rest of you go and take grain to relieve the hunger of your households. Bring your younger brother to me, so that your words will be confirmed. Then you won't die." So this is the whole thing of being a spy. If you don't do this, you are a spy, you're going to die. And they consented. Now, they know their daddy. They know he's not going to give up. He's not going to give up Benjamin. Yeah. So what else is going on here? We'll see.
Jacob's being tried.
Unless Jacob knows his father, what he would do, that his dad would go with him.
Well, we'll see. Yeah, it gets to be a bind. Then they said to each other, "Obviously we are being punished for what we did to our brother." So this is going on, and they kind of gather up, and they're remembering Joseph. Obviously, this whole thing was brought about by our sinfulness. Okay, we saw his deep distress when he pleaded with us, but we would not listen. Okay, that is a little window into things, because Joseph was in distress and they ignored it. Okay, the one thing that you don't do, even if you're going to love your enemy, is you don't ignore a person's distress. And they ignored their brother's distress, sold him into slavery, created a false death for the father, so that now he's been living in distress. And now they're in distress. And so the thread here is that once you begin to create an environment like this, where does it end? Where does the distress end? Where does the lie end? Where does the manipulation end? And they're finding out. It doesn't. It's come full circle. And it's all the way back on us now. And it's causing us trouble. So that's the lesson. That's the undercurrent that is here, that is kind of driving some of what's going to happen later. So we always, like my wife's famous for saying, your sins find you out. She loves to say that to people, excluding me and mostly her children. But anyway, so that's kind of what's going on here. But Reuben, who is the oldest, replied, he says, "Didn't I tell you not to harm the boy? I told you, but you wouldn't listen. Now we must account for his blood." Okay, so last time this kind of idea was being spoken of is when Cain killed Abel. So what they did to Joseph, the writer is equating to the same thing that happened to Abel. We snuffed out his life, and now we've got to answer for it. His life is calling back to us from the grave, they believe. That's why they're feeling this huge amount of guilt that's going on. And of course, in the story, Reuben, they threw him in the pit, and Reuben was going to sneak back around and get him out of the pit. But while Reuben was gone doing something, they sold him into slavery, and he comes back and he says, "Oh no, y'all ruined my plan of deception against you by selling him." So there's all this deception and stuff going on here, and it just creates more problems every time you turn around. Who was the original deceiver? The serpent.
Yeah, in the garden.
So everybody in this story gets to play the role of the serpent. And in some cases, it's non-redemptive. And then in other cases, the deception actually is redeemed, which is a promise for us. Because we find ourselves in the same game with other people and sometimes even with God. And Jesus comes to redeem the deception through our forgiveness. They did not realize that Joseph understood what they were saying, because they didn't realize it was Joseph, or that he could understand Hebrew.
Egyptian too, or whatever, through a translator, and here they are.
Yeah, they're spilling the beans right there in front of them. So what happens? Joseph turns away from them and weeps. Okay, it's becoming more than he can bear. See, he's operating as a deceiver now. And there's never any relief from that. We always carry the weight of that. It's why Jesus says, "You may know the truth, and the truth sets you free." There's no deception in me, is what he's saying. So he turned away and he wept. When he turned back and spoke to them, he took Simeon from them and had him bound before their eyes. Joseph then gave orders to fill their containers with grain, return each man silver to his sack, and give them provisions for their journey. The order was carried out, and they loaded the grains on their donkey and left. So Joseph then performs this transaction. He tells his servants, go load the donkeys, everything they need, and give them their money back. Okay? I'm keeping Simeon, though. He's the proxy for the arrival of Benjamin. So, 27. At the place where they lodged for the night, one of them opened his sack to get feed for his donkey and saw his silver there at the top of the bag. And he said to his brothers, "My silver has been returned. It's in my bag." And their hearts sank. Because now what do they think? Oh, this guy's going to think we stole from him.
Yeah.
Okay? Trembling, they turned to one another and said, "What has God done to us?" So this is the first time in this whole episode, from the very time that Joseph is thrown in the pit, this is the first time we see that the brothers are acknowledging what is God doing in all of this.
Well, they know because of their own wrongdoing, God is dealing with them.
Yeah. Well, they see this whole thing. How could this happen? We know we gave them the money. We know we gave it to them, and now it's back in our bag. What is God trying to do here? The first thought is he's trying to get us killed by these Egyptians. He's ready to wipe us out for what we've done. I mean, that's kind of where this thinking is going. They really are going to believe that we showed up as spies and not as just people in need hungry. So when they reached their father Jacob in the land of Canaan, they told him all that had happened to them. The man who is the Lord of the country spoke harshly to us and accused us of spying in the country. But we told him, we are honest and not spies. Okay, and the father, Jacob probably believes that. We are 12 brothers, sons of the same father, but one is no longer living, and the youngest is now with our father in the land of Canaan. The man who is the Lord of the country said to us, "This is how I will know you are honest." Okay, so this is the test here. Honesty's the goal, and here's the test. Leave one brother with me, take food to relieve the hunger of your households, and go. Bring back your youngest brother to me, and I will know that you are not spies but honest men. I will then give your brother back to you, and you can trade in the country. So what's Joseph asking for? You come back with the youngest brother, and everything's good.
He wants to see them.
One thing, yeah. It's a simple request, right?
Until Jacob gets involved.
Yeah. And as they begin emptying their sacks, there in each man's sack was his bag of silver. When they and their father saw their bags of silver, they were afraid. Then their father Jacob said to them, "It's me. It's me that you make childless. Joseph is gone, and Simeon is gone, and now you want to take Benjamin. Everything happens to me."
It almost sounds like what I used to say or said, and that other girl, why me?
Yeah, for me.
So that's what he's saying here. You're making me childless. Well, look, he's talking to 10 sons.
But it doesn't
Okay,
matter.
and he's got some.
Like Brother Richard said, my mother had 5 children, and I'm not one of them.
That's right. That's right.
But my place too, there were 6, but I'm not counted. Yeah.
So his daughters that are in his house, they don't count.
Yeah.
The 10 sons don't count. Nobody counts but who? Benjamin. And Joseph, who's dead.
Yeah.
And why?
Because he loved Rachel.
Because that's all that's left of Rachel. It's a beautiful story, except for the fact that it kind of discounts life in a way that we don't expect. And in the midst of this, he says everything happens to me. Okay, well, he doesn't know the rest of the story yet, but everything has really happened to Joseph. His up to then his favorite son. He had the code and the whole deal. Okay, but the pain and suffering that Joseph endured was all part of the pain and suffering that God ordained to bring about life. Okay, so we have this repeated theme all the way through the story. We're all caught up in the death that has happened that really hasn't happened, for the death that is possible but it doesn't happen. That there's famine, but there's also life that's rising up out of the famine, which I spoke on this morning a little bit. And so we have these real contrasting ideas of life and death. And who holds it in the balance? Joseph. And there we find the suffering servant that we find in Isaiah, that we also find in Jesus. That who holds the life in the balance? The one that has suffered, and suffered for the sake of God's program, for history to bring salvation. And that jumps it way ahead, but I had to get it out then. I'm bursting. So then Reuben said to his father, okay, Reuben is the oldest, says, you can kill my 2 sons. He says, there's death everywhere. If I don't bring him back, meaning Benjamin, back to you, put him in my care, and I will return him to you. So, Father, make me his father. I'm going to stand in your place for your son Benjamin. And if I don't succeed, I'm giving you my sons. Okay.
Not 1, but 2.
2. Okay. He almost steps into this Abrahamic role of I'm willing to sacrifice all of my promise so that you can retain yours. So it's...
And then this just gets crazier because my thought is, once you're a grandparent, I mean, I know Joseph and Benjamin were his favorite, but if Reuben's his oldest, chances are those kids were his first grandchildren.
Yeah.
There's nothing grander than grandchildren.
Yeah.
It's like, okay there, Papa.
Yeah.
He's going to give you the 2 of your favorite, should be your favorite grandchildren.
Right.
Are willing to let you have, kill 2 if they're your favorite.
Well, and see, something that hasn't been discussed for a long time is the promise. That is, how does this promise remain? And it remains through genealogy and geography. And when you start saying, I'm willing to sacrifice the genealogy, the seed of the promise that I offer in this, I'm willing to let it go for the sake of Benjamin. Okay, so the writer is bringing us back to Abraham in a real sense here. Abraham and Isaac. And he's wanting us to see that there is at least a glimmer of the promised theology at work in the life of these brothers. And we find it here in Reuben. But Jacob answered, my son will not go down with you. For his brother is dead. He doesn't know that he's down there too. And he alone is left. If anything happens to him on your journey, you will bring me gray hairs. You will bring my gray hairs down to Sheol in sorrow. So it's just down to, boy. The world is
What's Sheol?
Sheol's a place of the dead. So it was the ultimate pit. There was prison, that's a pit. There was the pit they threw him in out in the desert when they sold him to the Ishmaelites, and then there's Sheol. That's really the pit of all pits. Yeah. So what is he saying here? He says, there's no way. If you leave with him, I'm going to die in sorrow. So he doesn't let him go. So what happens? The grain runs out. That's what happens. The grain runs out. Now the famine in the land was severe. It reminds us. Let's go back and remember while this is going on. There's a famine. Nobody's got anything to eat. When they used up the grain they had brought back from Egypt, their father said to them, "Go back and buy us a little food." But Judah, he kind of instigated this whole thing. Remember, with Joseph. Said to him, the man, he's not calling him Lord right now. They've forgotten all of that. He's now the man. The man specifically warned us, you will not see me again unless your brother is with you. What's he mean? You can come back, but you're not getting any grain if Benjamin's not with you. If you will send our brother with us, we will go down and buy food for you. But if you will not send him, we will not go down. For the man said to us, you will not see me again unless your brother is with you. Why have you caused me so much trouble? Israel asked. All right, so it's been Jacob. Now we're using his new name that God gave him, the one that struggles with God. He's a struggling guy.
And all this time, Simeon's sitting in prison, wondering if they're ever going to come back.
Yeah, we don't know how long this has been, but Simeon's there thinking, maybe they are going to leave me in prison.
Yeah, we threw Joseph in the pit. They're going to leave me in the pit.
They're going to leave me in in the pit.
They might not be
Yeah.
saying the truth.
Yeah. You know that's what he.
That's all we
Is
know.
this what Joseph went through?
You know that's what he's thinking.
Got to be.
They're going to leave me here.
Well, maybe he's being fed in prison.
Oh,
And he's also thinking, there's no way that my father is going to send Benjamin back for me.
To rescue me, yeah.
There's just no way that I'm worth that to him. Just the family. We could go through the whole family stuff here, but that would take another month.
The beginning of family counseling.
Oh, gosh. So he says, why have you caused me so much trouble? The struggler says. So we're reminded of two things here. That one is the Israel's name is the name used with the promise. So we're the writer is kind of inching in, slowly revealing to us again what this is all about for the promise. But it also is reminding that nothing that we ever do with God is without struggle. And it's true. We struggle with God. And this is a struggle. A lot of things have had to happen here in order for God to accomplish His program. And we can either do it two ways. We can go with God in it and wait on Him and have to endure some trouble, but know that we're never alone in it. Or we can go our own way, like they did with Joseph. And they're never really sure, where is God in this? The only time that they bring up God is when they believe we're in trouble because God is out to get us in this. See? And that's what we do a lot of times. We mess up and then we say God's out to get us.
And that was part of Wednesday night. Mike's God.
Yeah, out to get.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's out to get me.
yeah. No, He's never out to get us. Yeah. So he said, why did you tell the man that you had another brother? Like, why couldn't you keep that part of our life a secret? They're pretty good at keeping secrets. They've been keeping Joseph's death a secret for a lot of years. So why did you have to tell him? So even Jacob's kind of wanting to deal in half-truths here. But they answered, the man kept asking us about our family. Is your father still alive? Do you have another brother? And we answered him accordingly. Why? They needed grain. They didn't want to. And besides, what's in question here? Our honesty was a question. So we wanted to answer honestly.
And they're being accused as to being a spy.
Yeah, so.
Save our necks, Dad.
Yeah. So how could we know that he would say, bring your brother here? So when we think about it, who's actually acting as a spy? Joseph is. He's the one trying to find out. He's the one looking for the weakness, right? Yeah, you couldn't even. They can't even write this well in Hollywood.
Yeah,
this is so good.
Yeah,
yeah, you can't even come up with stuff like that.
Movies of the Bible exactly like they are, but they're so much better than what they try to put
Yeah,
together themselves.
yeah. Then Judah said to his father Israel, "Send the boy with me." All right, Reuben's already offered to do this, right?
Right.
Now Judah's stepping in. Send the boy with me. We will go on our way so that we may live and not die. This is the either-or question at work. Neither we, nor you, nor our dependents, meaning our wives and children, your daughters, okay? I will be responsible for him. You can hold me personally accountable.
Exclamation point.
Yeah. If I do not bring him back to you and set him before you, I will be guilty before you forever. Wow. Okay. So, interesting here.
That's got to be big.
Yeah. Now, what's the difference between Reuben and Judah here? Reuben passes off the penalty of his failure on his sons. Judah says, no, I will be responsible.
Is Reuben the oldest?
Yeah. But Judah's the lion.
Judah's the line of the lineage of Jesus too.
Judah's the lineage of Jesus.
And the lion.
And so we have this great foreshadowing here of Judah stepping in and say, I will offer my life for my brother. Not my offspring, my life. and it's probably the most beautiful point that we could. This is like a climactic. It's leading us to the climax, but this is one of those platonic, climactic places here where everything seems to shift here, right? He says, if I do not bring him back to you and set him before you, I will be guilty before you forever. If we had not delayed, we could have come back twice by now. And what's Judah saying? Time is of the essence. We're starving. Okay. Then their father Israel said to them, if it must be so, then do this. So the offer of Judah's life, in case things go sideways, is the thing that changes Israel's mind. It's like he finally sees, I have a son that does have a deep concern for my concerns and for the lives of my family. That's significant. We find that. He's not being selfish. Yeah. And that's what we find in Jesus. God is able to say, here's my son. He cares deeply about the things that I care about. And he's going to redeem those that I won't redeem. Then the father said to Israel, if you must go, then do this. Put some of the best products of the land in your packs and take them down to the man as a gift. So what do they have to offer? They don't have a lot. A little balsam, a little honey, some aromatic gum and resin, pistachios, almonds. Okay.
That's a food.
Yeah. Heart healthy food, by the way.
Yeah.
So take twice as much silver with you. Return the silver that was returned to you in the top of your bags. Perhaps it was a mistake. It wasn't a mistake. It truly was a test. Okay. It sets their mind. What are we going to say when we come back? You know, what's going to happen when we return? And the first thing they do is start accusing us of being thieves. Okay.
But Jacob's getting ahead of the game. It's like, I'm going to load them down, boys.
I'm going to do all I can
to make you honest and make it right.
That's right. Take your brother also and go back at once to the man. May God Almighty cause the man to be merciful to you, so that he will release your brother and Benjamin to you. So, what do we have happening here? Take your brother, go back down, okay? And then it says, may God Almighty cause the man to be merciful. God Almighty has already been working. So, what Jacob is asking for, God has already been faithful in doing.
And he's at least acknowledging God in this transaction.
Yeah.
Boys, go. I'm going to pray that God's going to do this. I'm going to pray for this man.
Yeah.
Having no clue that God's already got it all under control.
So we see the evidence of God's mercifulness in here. Specifically, we know that it's at work in Joseph. He wept over his brothers. So the compassion and mercy is really free-flowing at that point, but still hidden at that point. And then we also see that God's mercy is at work because Judah has stood up and is living out, really, the life that God has called the nation to, the family to, that your life really belongs to the world. You're going to be giving your life. When they're called out to be a nation of priests, when he calls out and says you're going to be as numerous as the stars in the sky, and everyone, all the nations are going to come. So there's two things going on, though broadly they're here. And so he says, as for me, if I'm deprived my sons, then I'm deprived my sons. So what is he saying? God's mercy, may his mercy be at work, but if it's not at work, hey, kind of like Job, I came into this world with nothing, I leave with nothing. Ashes, dust to dust. So he's the writer is allowing us to know now that Jacob is resolved to whatever happens. When that happens, for any of us, really the only place to turn to in life at that point is to God. You realize that you've done your best. Everything else that is happening is in other people's hands, and now all you can do is turn to God. So the men took this gift, double the amount of silver and Benjamin. They immediately went down to Egypt and stood before Joseph. When Joseph saw Benjamin with them, he said to his steward, "Take the men to my house, slaughter an animal and prepare it, for they will eat with me at noon." The man did as Joseph said and brought them to Joseph's house. Now, all they know about Joseph up to this point is that they've been accused of spies. He probably now believes that they're thieves, and that he wants Benjamin for whatever reason he wants Benjamin. Hasn't really been disclosed yet. So they have no cards to play. There's nothing that they can do or say that's going to change it in the outcome. Joseph is holding everything. He's got all the power. He holds all the cards. But the men were afraid because they were taken to Joseph's house. They said, "We have been brought here because of the silver that was returned in our bags the first time. They intend to overpower us, seize us, make us slaves, and take our donkeys." Okay?
Well, they're going to the worst case scenario.
Hey, it's all over, man. When you lose your beast of burden, you know the life's over. Okay? So their biggest fear here is becoming slaves. You do pick up on the irony there, right?
That's what they did.
Their brother that was pleading with them in his distress not to be sold into slavery is the very thing that they did. So they're living with their own guilt at this point. Nothing that Joseph has done has indicated that he wants them as slaves.
He's gonna do this. Yeah, they just freaking out.
They're just reliving their own sinfulness here.
Well, didn't they just hear him tell his
servant to bring him to his house?
Meat and they'll be eating with me at noon?
Well, he just told them to bring them.
Oh.
He doesn't tell them they're going to share a meal
But
together.
he told us,
Yeah. So their worst nightmare that they instigated against their brother, they now is going to come against them. They said, "My Lord, we really did come down here the first time to buy food. When we came to the place where we lodged for the night and opened our bags of grain, each one's silver was at the top of their bag." So they're saying, "Really, please believe us."
We're confessing here.
Yeah. "It was the full amount of our silver, and we have brought it back with us. We have brought additional silver with us to buy food. We don't know who put our silver in the bags." Okay, so Joseph knows. And they're proven to be pretty honest. Okay? They haven't failed the test yet. Then the steward said, "May you be well. Don't be afraid. Your God and the God of your father must have put treasure in your bags." Okay? So the very thing that they said they believe God had done in order to get them killed is the very thing that the servant is telling them happened.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So how does that information get passed along? Somewhere along the line, Joseph understood their trepidation, or this is just the way that we acknowledge God in the middle of the story. That the test that is underway doesn't only belong to Joseph, it also belongs to God. He says, "Your God, the God of your father, must have put treasures in your bag. I received your silver." Then he brought Simeon out to them. I bet that was a conversation. The steward brought the men into Joseph's house, gave them water to wash their feet, and got feed for their donkeys. So this is the height of hospitality.
Yeah, they're really
Okay.
They think they're being treated good to their doom, like the Last Supper.
Yeah. Yeah.
They enjoy what they can.
Since the men had heard that they were going to eat a meal there, they prepared their gift for Joseph's arrival at noon. So now they know there is a meal, and they brought in all the things that they're offering to Joseph. When Joseph came home, they brought him the gift that they carried into the house, and they bowed to the ground before him. Second fulfillment of this. Yeah.
Here's that dream that's coming to pass.
He asked if they were well, and he said, "How is your elderly father that you told me about? Is he still alive?" So now Joseph is living with this moment of hope. I'm going to get to see my father again. They answered, your servant, our father, is well. He is still alive. And they knelt low and paid homage to him. Third time. Well, actually, fourth time. When he looked up and saw his brother Benjamin, his mother's son, he asked, "Is this your youngest brother that you told me about?" Then he said, "May God be gracious to you, my son." Joseph hurried out because he was overcome with emotion for his brother, and he was about to weep. So everything that Joseph is about is on the surface in the rawest way, but he can't let anybody know.
Right, because he's that powerful dude, and they can't see what's happening
Yeah.
there. You know?
He can't tip his hand yet. Okay? But you already get the sense that this is a moment that probably Joseph literally dreamed about, but believed it would never happen. And God brings about a famine that makes this happen. Also brings about a famine so that Joseph could be elevated. Also brings about a famine so that life could be brought out of the death that was happening worldwide, so that the world would know the greatness of Joseph. So a lot of things going on here. He went into the inner room and wept there. When he had washed his face, then he washed his face and came out. Gaining his composure, he said to his servants, "Serve the meal." They served him by himself, his brothers by themselves, and the Egyptians who were eating with them by themselves, because Egyptians could not eat with Hebrews, since, that was detestable to them. Okay, kind of a little turn there.
Mine says an abomination to the Egyptians.
Yeah. Yeah, so here they are, and it's like they're in this room. The Egyptians are in one place, the Hebrews are in another place, and then there's,
The workers in another
and Joseph. They were seated before him in order by age, from the firstborn to the youngest. The men looked at each other in astonishment. Portions were served to them from Joseph's table, and Benjamin's portion was 5 times larger than any of theirs.
Joseph's like my baby brother.
So here they are thinking, "Oh my goodness, it's the baby son again." You know, we can't get any credit with anybody.
Get away from the babies.
Yeah, and then
Isn't that so true? Oh my gosh! Just give us
It
the
is
babies,
true.
and we'll just give them everything.
So then it ends. We're not going to get to chapter 44. I'm sad to say, but we'll do it next week. It says, then they drank and became drunk with Joseph. All right, what's the significance? This is like a moment where everything's all right for a moment until we get to 44.
And mine just says drank and married with him.
Yeah.
They were having a good old
So that it was
time.
just a good old
They were having a
time.
good old time.
It was like there were new friends here, and none of them realize, what Joseph knows.
I just find it amazing. They don't even recognize him, I guess.
It's
with his
been
boys.
too many years. He's
Well, he was still a
but
young
he's
kid.
Egyptian now. You got to realize he's not even speaking to them in their language. He's got the ponytail or whatever. They're the old vagabonds. He's the highest in the land of the Egyptians, so they had no clue.
And then he
that
died.
they're even-
And I'm
He
sure
was-
he grew up.
He was the baby boy, either too young to work or too coddled to work.
Yeah.
Or
So he
what?
coddled.
Coddled.
Coddled. So when they saw him last,
Yeah, they didn't know him as this big leader. Yeah, he would not get any of that.
yeah, he certainly, when the Ishmaelites received him, there was something about him that made him special, because they probably sold him for more money to to
I mean,
Potiphar's
always
household,
considered he's
the
tall,
captain
right,
of the
and
guard.
handsome. Even as the
Yeah.
baby, he was a good-looking
Yeah.
fella because they made him the beautiful coat. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? So, he
But
was a
but the other
striking guy.
side of it, probably the more important side, is they believed their lie. They believed their own deception. That no, he's dead. He's got to be dead.
Yeah, but see,
There's just no way.
They're not even thinking until we get to 44,
Ye-
45.
Yeah, 44 and 45.
They're not having no clue it's Jackson.
Yeah. So really, that's what happens a lot of times. We sin, and we tell ourselves a lie about it, and after a while, we believe the lie. And then what happens? Boy, one day it hits you in the face. Oh wait, it hadn't hit them yet, but it's gonna. And then the truth and the lies for nearly a generation all come rushing to the front. And you can't ignore them now. You see the truth that is Joseph's life, and you see the truth that has been the lie of their life. But it's all overcome, okay, when the family is reunited, okay? And what Joseph is able to offer is Eden in the pit. And that's where the writer brings us all the way back to Eden. What's God's program here? We got to get back to Eden, because that's where we last find God. See, that's where God is. That's where God lives. That's where God walks. That's where God created. He created the garden so He could be with His people, and then we sinned. We got turned out of the garden. But everything's about getting back to Eden for God. So what does He do? He reminds them of Eden by sending them to the land of Goshen, which it also has the spelling actually in the Hebrew is Garshin. So one letter away from garden. Yeah. And so they wind up in the garden. In the midst of the pit, there's the garden. And they live there, and what do? They become fruitful and multiply, just like in the garden. I love this for this very reason. See, God comes to us in our pit, and in Christ it all becomes a garden.
And He still wants to bless us.
Yeah, but we have to do it His way. If they hadn't done it Joseph's way, in fact, they had it pretty good until Joseph dies, which is not too long after. And the next thing we hear out of the Bible is that they're in slavery. The garden has become the pit. And why? Because the garden keeper is gone. He's gone. And sin takes over. The worst kind of sin. From the Egyptian point of view, it's that sin of being unsure, of not knowing these people. That's what they start talking about, those people, and that's the thing that brings out the worst of us when we start calling other people those people.
What's happening today?
Yeah, it's all gonna because yeah. Well, what raises its ugly head? Fear. What's fear? That's being convinced that God doesn't care anymore. Yeah. So anyway, that was pretty good. I enjoyed that. And those two are watching. Good. That must be.
It's only Sunday nights.
It's deep. Doctors.